Hey, it's Justin Goff here from Copy Accelerator, and I am with a Copy Accelerator member, Eric Pantzer, who in the last year has had a huge leap in his copywriting income, basically tripling his copywriting income, going from somewhere around 5K a month to now having $15,000 to $20,000 months as a copywriter, which is a pretty amazing leap. So I wanted to have him on to share his story and dig into how he's done that. But first, if you're new here or if you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, make sure you click the subscribe button down below. It's that little red button. That'll make sure you see all the new videos that I'm putting out. All right, Eric, let's hop in. Really big leap for you in the past year, but I'm really curious. I know before this you were a paralegal for 10 years. You lived in the Philippines a little bit. You kind of said you called yourself a job hopper. Never really
Oh yeah.
never really that happy with what you were doing. Let's kind of chat about how you got into copy.
Sure. So when I was in the Philippines, I gotten burned out on the law a bit, so I wanted to do something completely different. So I moved over to the mountains of the northern Philippines, up in a little village called Bontoc, and the community development organization I worked with there had asked me to write a fundraising letter. I had never written a fundraising letter before, so I got on Google and I looked up how to write a fundraising letter. And that led me to Dan Kennedy and Gary Halbert, and eventually to direct response marketing and copywriting. And from there, like that was kind of my aha moment. Like, oh shit, like this is what I want to do. The meritocracy of it. You get what you earn. I loved that aspect. I loved the data driven part of it. And so when I came back about a year later to America, that became like my sole focus, was to become a direct response copywriter. And so I went back into the law to kind of be able to afford courses and stuff. But yeah, that was from that point on, that was my goal.
So when you were doing law stuff, I'm curious, what was kind of the big motivation to get out of that?
So probably the biggest one is that a there's a ceiling to it. I could never, without going to law school and actually becoming an attorney, there's really, like, I could make little incremental raises in my income, but there's nothing like you see in the copywriting world. I mean, I'm not going to triple my income as a paralegal. Like that's simply not going to happen. So that was a big one of it too. I hated being in an office. Like, I know that some people like that, and I enjoyed like the camaraderie of it, but having to put on my khakis and my button down every single day and drive 40 minutes in the office, and just I could not hate it anymore. And so that was as big, if not maybe even a bigger motivation to get out of there. And then just the work itself was kind of emotionally difficult. I didn't realize it really at the time, and it wasn't as I began to do kind of more mindset stuff, and emotional work down the line. I realized just how much that weighed on me. So I didn't really recognize that at the time, but that was another big reason I think subconsciously I wanted out as well.
Makes sense. So let's talk about the first fundraising letter you wrote. So you said you studied some Dan Kennedy, Gary Halbert stuff. How did that letter actually turn out?
So I don't remember the numbers as I sit here, but it was somewhere around 2 million pesos, which would have been around $40,000 American. And one of the reasons I think is because the organization itself. I don't know why I'm blurry all of a sudden. There we go. The organization itself had a really awesome big idea. Their whole thing. I'll save the story for another time, but basically the whole idea was they created something called the Receivers to Givers program, where we would help to fund. We would go through a process with these groups to help them build little businesses within their village, since they were in pretty bad relationships with bankers and suppliers, got almost no profit. So we helped them build these businesses, and once they were profitable, they would pass that money along to the next organization trying to do the same thing instead of paying us back. So what I was able to do is I was able to say, look, you guys send, your organization sends money to these different community development projects all over the world. And those projects just take like that $10,000 is spent once. And with this, that $10,000 you send is going to be spent over and over and over again. And it's going to change, the lives of countless communities. And so I think that was part of the reason it was so successful. We really didn't send it out to that many organizations, but it was a game changer for the group.
Nice. Do you remember what you got paid for that letter?
I didn't get paid. I was
Or you
volunteering.
did? Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, I wasn't making any money while I was over there. So
So, okay, I'm curious how you got from that to kind of getting a little more into copywriting. So, what was kind of the next steps? Did you start looking for other jobs in the copywriting world? Where did that go?
so um, I I went and I read the Ultimate Sales Letter. That was the very first book on copy that I read. It was Dan Kennedy's book. I started reading the Gary Halbert letter, and just not too long after I got back, like this was maybe a year later. Like I studied, Gary Halbert. That I did read some of the books that he recommended, and was hand copying letters and all that stuff. But about a year after I came back, um, his sons Bond and Kevin put on the Gary Memorial event in Vegas. About my job is that for a college dropout, I was making a fair bit of money, and so I got the money together to go to Vegas. Never written a word of copy in my life, and here I am among Bond Halbert and Mike Morgan and like all these huge names. John Carlton was there. I like sat next to John Carlton. I was like, oh, this is insane. He was another guy that I studied early on, and from that. I met somebody named Trevor Crook, who at the time was one of the guys at Agora Financial, and he introduced me to Joe Schriefer, and we talked about. And again, keep in mind, I'd never written a word of copy in my entire life. Just from making these connections, I was flown up to Baltimore and was given a shot, at the Agora Financial to become one of their new copywriters. And I ended up not making it. It was like, they took like the top two, and I was like number 3 or 4 or whatever. But it was an awesome experience. And then from there, it was a few months because that whole process had taken a while. That was like a 6-month process. And so I I had been kind of like just studying and studying and studying. I hadn't really taken any action on. Like I was still working at the law. I was bartending nights, just so I could afford all this stuff. And Trevor Crook again, he popped back up. He made a post what he called shadow boxing. He was like, if you want to become a great boxer, yeah, shadow boxing is great, and the training is good, and you're going to get everything, but until you actually step in the ring, you're not, and take a few shots, you're never going to know if you're any good, and you're never going to be able to call yourself a boxer. And I saw that, I was just like, okay. So I got on a job board and I applied, and again, another couple month process, got it. And it was going to be a huge pay cut. It was going to be something like a $50,000 pay cut, making a little less than $3,000 a month just as this junior copywriter. But I was like, man, if I don't do this now, I'm never going to do it. I've heard a couple people say, good is the enemy of great. And I was like, if I just kind of sit here complacent like this, I'm never going to do it. So I did it. I quit in February 2020. I quit my legal job and I started as a junior copywriter, and started off with sales letters, and just kind of took off from there.
So, in the beginning, are you mostly writing? So, you said sales letters. Is that kind of what they stuck you with, or is it like you're kind of doing everything? You're doing that. You're doing emails. You're doing ads.
So, at first, I was just supposed to be sales letters. Like I was brought on to help Jeremy, who was the owner of the company, to help him just kind of get through sales letters faster, to be able to produce more, because they had the company was split into two, where we had a supplement side and then we had a keto cookbook business, like kind of a front end self-liquidating $7 offer. But then when I showed aptitude for the marketing stuff, because I mean so much of what I had learned was not just copy. Like I had just for the fact that I was studying Dan Kennedy and Gary Halbert out of the gate, like that's so much of their stuff is the marketing side, is the business side. And so I was already conversant in that kind of thing with them. And so it's like, okay, like let's get you write some emails. And then within a few months, they put me on the email list, like managing the email list, which I had never done before. It was definitely just kind of thrown in the deep end, a trial by fire sort of thing, but it worked. And within just a few months, I doubled the revenue of the list. We had gone from hitting about 30,000-40,000 a month to we were at or above 6 figures every single month. And so, by that point, then it had turned into an everything sort of thing. I was writing Facebook ads. I was on Facebook ads call, doing, strategy calls for that, for the emails, I was still writing sales pages. I was, doing research, writing challenge funnels and just, all this stuff, upsells. And so the cool thing about that is that I got to see the business from this high level. I got to see how it all worked together and how copy was a important piece of it, excuse me, but it wasn't the only piece of it. And so I think being able to really to see that high level, but also get down and dirty and get my hands dirty at the actual workings of it was so huge. And I think that just really just threw rocket fuel on my growth as a copywriter, because I was getting feedback every single day on copy. Somebody was looking at my copy and telling me, hey, I don't think this will work. Here's why. Here's the data to support it. Or they'd say, hey, let's try this. And sometimes it would flop, and sometimes we would bring in, $10,000 in a single email. And so just that feedback every single day, obviously I can't say how much faster I progressed from that, but I have to imagine it shaved years off my learning curve.
Oh yeah.
Truly.
Yeah, I mean, I always talk about that, especially that first 2 years, like the two biggest, most important things are getting reps in and getting feedback. If you can get those two things, I mean, you're going to get better than 95% of copywriters simply from putting the reps in, getting the feedback. And if you're seeing the data on how things are converting, what's not converting, okay, this kind of angle keeps working, this one doesn't work. That type of stuff is absolutely invaluable. So the fact that you got that in the first year is pretty amazing. I want to hop into kind of after that, and where that, there's some lagness. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, cool.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah. So where did things kind of go? So you got this gig. When did you kind of move out and start taking on kind of more clients and doing a little more freelancing?
So I credit that to one major thing. Your business partner, Stefan Georgi. When I was at Nourishing Brands, Tim Ratcliffe was there. He was like the senior copywriter, and he had mentioned something about one of his letters, and he was like, "Hey, this guy's really smart. You should get on his list, and just kind of go check out, the stuff that he's done." So I was like, "Okay." So I got on his list, and this was, I think, in December of 20. This must have been no. Anyway, I forget exactly when I got on his list, but he sent like his welcome email, was like, hey, if you have any questions, reply, and I'll try to answer. And I was like, okay, that's probably just marketing nonsense. Like, there's no way he's actually going to reply. So I asked him about his morning routine, and he replied. And I was like, oh, cool. Hey, like, this is a real dude. Like, okay. So shortly after that, he launched his RMBC course. And, since I already, he'd come so, highly recommended. And, I had seen that he was somebody who was actually interested in what his students were doing. I was like, okay, I'll buy it. So I bought it. I get in there. I studied that. And then shortly after that, he launched a competition where there were going to be two products that writers were writing for. And he was going to select 10 writers per product. And then of those, one was going to be the winner. And so I got selected for the Native Path Keto Collagen. That's where I got to meet like Kate Aseltine and all them. And I ended up winning. That Mike wrote the winning letter. And that's actually kind of a funny story too, because everything that went wrong with that project could have gone wrong with it. I didn't receive the Google Calendar invite for the call, like the kickoff call. I was like, oh God, I look like an idiot in front of, this huge dude. And then I immediately caught COVID, and I was in bed for most of, we had 3 weeks to write the letter, and I was in bed for most of it. And I finally just kind of like came out of it with like 2.5 days left to finish this letter. And so like I'd been kind of researching and stuff, while I was laying in bed, I hadn't written anything. So I spent like a day on the headline and the lead and just getting that really dialed in. And I spent the next day, I literally wrote like this 30-page sales letter, just, soup to nuts. And it ended up winning, and I couldn't believe it. But after that, I started getting, my name was out there. I essentially see that at the moment I launched my freelance career. And I also had kind of some limiting beliefs. Like it would be a while before I would hit like 10K months, but I had gotten 3,000 initially for the letter, and then he paid another 3,000 for the winner. I think Jazz was also the winner on the other product. Oh yeah, he was. And so I was like, man, like I just made $6,000 off of essentially 2 days work that I did, with when I was sick. Like imagine if I actually applied myself on this. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this thing freelance. So I stayed with, the keto company just because I was learning so much, and they gave me my first shot. So I was still super loyal to them. But I started kind of going out my own, and because I had this win under my belt already, I started getting referrals, and those people would send me to other people. I hired a coach. I hired Chris Wright, and he put me in front of some good people. And then in September of 2020, at that point, I was like, okay, like there's no way I'm not going to the Copy Accelerator event. And so this was, obviously still in the middle of pandemic, and so it was totally virtual. It wasn't anything like it is now. I see now how much more fun the live events are, but at the time it was just the virtual event. And then I was so blown away with everything, with the level of knowledge that was shared, and I was like, man, these are my people. Like these are the people that I want to hang out with. And so I joined, and then from there, man, everything just kind of took off. Like at the next event, I would meet at your house. Actually, I would meet Ning Lee, and I would meet Jared Harlan, both of whom have played, and Troy Erickson as well was there. And those three guys played huge roles in my success. I hired Ning as a coach. Jared and Troy have both been friends, and have put me in front of some awesome clients like Jason Capital. And then I just, taken over for Jared on the Breakthrough Guitar List, which I just found out yesterday. Which
Yeah, I saw that.
Unbelievable.
Congrats.
I'm so blown away, excited for that. And then I started working with Ning at Paleo Hacks last May. And so just, that one event where we went to your house and partied afterwards, like I've met, some of the most crucial people in my entire career. And so, from there, once I started working at Paleo Hacks and Jason Capital, that gave me a really good base to kind of work from. Like I had a good retainer base. And so I could go and, work on other projects. Like I tried my hand at an agency, didn't really like that. Went and worked for ClickFunnels, which is also kind of an agency. At the time, I wasn't as into that, but I got to experiment, and I got to begin to open up, and really explore the things that I really wanted to do. And I finally, for the first time in my life, had freedom to explore, like, what is it that I want to do with my time? And so I really started to dig into that. And that's, I don't know how much you want to go down that path. That's led to a whole other host of things that have been really incredible for me.
Nice. Yeah, it's amazing how those like just couple connections can really change everything. Because this really, more than anything, is a relationship business. It's like you're going to get a lot of clients from just people you meet at events, from people you meet at the bar after the event. I mean, some of the best friends I've made in this industry have all kind of come from that type of stuff. One thing I want to dive into that I think it would be really interesting. So you've been doing this now for 2 years, pretty full ahead. What are some of the things you kind of realize now that you wish you would have known starting back in 2020?
I wish that I would have. It's funny you mentioned the thing about relationships, and it's kind of interesting because, like, I think it's worth pointing out that, like, with Ning and Troy and Jared, like I wasn't talking to them with like, hey, maybe they'll send me clients, or it was just like, I'm building this relationship because I like you and I like to talk to you and I think that you're an interesting person. And so I think I wish I had known. I wish I had just got my head out of like the get mindset. Like my head was so much in the get mindset in the beginning, and I was always, anybody that I talked to, it was because that I was looking for something, and it didn't take long for me to realize that wasn't the way to do it. Like, that if I had moved to a give mindset more quickly, who knows how much even faster I could have grown. But I think that was probably the biggest thing, is like relationships and teams too. Like I'm seeing so much more, and I've resisted it for so long. But like having a good team of people, and whether that be your actual team, like your work team, or whether if that's having a really good group of people around you. Like I've made some incredibly close friends very quickly, just because we're on the same wavelength through these groups. Shout out to Ella Edwards and Jake Blue as well. So we just had that trip to Idaho. But people that build you up, and are talking about cool stuff and are having cool ideas, and just are interesting people who are moving in the direction that you want to move. It's so priceless that it's almost even difficult to put words to it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, it's something I look back on now for my own career, and wish I would have done that differently. Because I was very much I can do this on my own. I don't need anybody's help. I'm fine being like the lone wolf, which is just a really dumb way to go about it. It really is.
Mhm.
Like, there's there's no like, you don't get like extra like medals for doing it all on your own. And that's kind of the way I thought of it, though, which was weird. It's a very strange
Yeah.
kind of way of thinking of it. Like there was something more noble about doing everything on your own. But yeah,
I get all the credit. Nobody
yeah. But yeah, I 100% agree. Having that kind of group around you, that to support you, I mean, you can get everything from it. Like you get referrals, you get support, you get help on stuff. Super, super crucial, especially in those first couple of years. One thing I'd love to kind of dive into now. So I think people will be really interested in knowing kind of exactly what you're doing now. So you mentioned a little bit with Paleo Hacks, Jason Capital, and then Breakthrough Guitar. So you are managing all these email lists, correct?
So I am just writing for so Paleo Hacks and Jason Capital are kind of the opposite ends, in that I don't manage Paleo Hacks lists, but I do write a lot of their emails. And then Jason, this is not a marketing thing. Jason Capital writes the vast majority of his emails. The fact that I can write any of his emails is because I'm pretty good at it. I was told when I was coming in, you were not going to write anything. I was like, okay, that's fine. So I do mostly the deliverability and setting up the autoresponders on that. And then I've got Breakthrough Guitar, which I will start on Monday. But just out of the conversation that Jonathan and I had alone, he sent me a message on Slack yesterday. He was going to take one of the ideas we talked about into VSL. So he's like, we're already making money over here, which is
Nice.
definitely what you want to hear from a client. Be good. And then I also am I finished up a project before the Agora event for Money Map Press, and Terry's in the Bahamas this week. Terry White's is in the Bahamas this week, but he said once he comes back, he's going to be making an official offer to bring me on to do more projects for them as well. So, and then I also mentor with Kim Krause Schwab, and so I wrote just finished up, literally like just sent for final review, a sales letter for her. So I've got a lot of plates in the air. That's the way I like it.
Nice. I like one thing I want to kind of point out to people listening is, so you can get paid, let's say $100, $200 for writing emails, but when you start taking on more responsibility with the email list, like managing the email list, doing stuff with deliverability, that's when you can really kind of bump that income up, and you can start making $5,000 a month, $6,000 a month, $10,000 a month. And you can even get percentages of the revenue that you're bringing in, which is really nice. So that's kind of
another point.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I'll make another point on that too. To go back to what we were saying earlier, one of the cool things about being a list manager too is that you see the data in real time. Like you figure out what's working as you're doing it. I think that's one of the reasons that I got as good as email as quickly as I did, because I saw what copy worked, what didn't, what tests were working, and you see that stuff in real time. I mean, that's priceless information.
So one thing I want to tap into, we've talked a little bit about where you're at before, what you're doing now. I'm curious, what's like the plan for, let's say, the next 6 to 12 months? I know you obviously just picked up this big client with Breakthrough Guitar, so I'm sure that's a big focus. Is kind of your focus right now continuing to do what you're doing with the current clients? Do you have other plans? What's that kind of look like?
Yes and no. like I mentioned, one of the cool things about this is that it gives me the freedom to find out what I want to actually do. And I have slowly begun to form an idea of what that is. And one of the big things that Ning and I worked on whenever we were coaching together, another Copy Accelerator member, he walked me through a lot of mindset work, and sort of the Brent Charlton stuff, like you talked about, working on the inner scripts and emotional work. And I've also done work with like Laura George through her Diamond Day event on more mindset stuff. And through that, I've sort of come to realize, because I've lived most of my life here to here, like I've been in my head for most of it. And I'm realizing the incredible importance of figuring out, how to communicate with your subconscious mind. There was a speaker at Ian Stanley's event up in Boise just a few weeks ago, and he was talking about imagine that your mind is like horses. Like if you have 5 horses, you could have the most thoroughbred, incredibly well genetic, like best trained, best horses in the world. But if they're tied to 95 horses that are going the other direction, they're going to lose every time. They're going to lose every time. And so he said that's essentially the way your conscious mind and your subconscious mind are. So I've been looking into breath work, body work, mindset stuff, like the Brent Charlton stuff, and really trying to figure out how to release a lot of this stuff. In fact, I had a thing when I was kind of in the midst of Ning's coaching. I did like this 9-minute breathwork session, and it just uncorked something inside of me. And like I journaled like 25 pages of all this. It was like really getting deep on like the childhood reasons for the reasons that I look for success, and why I feel the need to be like a people pleaser, and it just all this stuff, like literally 25 pages worth of stuff. And so like I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to piece together different things to create sort of my own offer, my own ability to coach and to walk people through sort of a similar transformation. It's different for everybody, but to figure out what is going on in their brain and body that is keeping them stuck. I firmly believe that, I learned a lot of tactics, I learned a lot of skills, but if you're trying to run even the best software on an outdated computer, it's never going to work. So you've got to update the hardware. You've got to get the hardware right. So that's my big focus going forward over the next few years. I want to become super proficient in that, and to really not only just to build a business out of it, but to be able to really make an impact in the lives of copywriters and entrepreneurs who are struggling to that next level.
Nice, love that. All right, so we're gonna wrap up, but I'm gonna leave you with one question here. So let's say somebody's watching this, they're a copywriter, maybe they're new, maybe they've been doing it for a while. Based on your experience over the last 2 years, what would be one big piece of advice that you would leave the copywriter with?
I would leave it with, you are probably more capable than you think you are. Obviously, you want to get good, you want to get skills, but don't be afraid to take the chance. Don't think, oh, there's going to be so many people applying to this thing, there's no way that I could get it. Or even with like, I'm kind of an ambivert, like I'm halfway between introvert and extrovert. But when I was looking at joining Copy Accelerator, I was like, these are my people, but I'm such a beginner. Like I feel so out of place. People just killing it, and I felt like I didn't belong. But the truth is, like, you can grow into these things, and I promise you are probably more capable than you think you are. So don't be afraid to take a shot. Don't be afraid to take a risk, because that's the only way that you can grow. That's the only way that you can become who you're supposed to be, and give yourself the freedom to find out what you can be. So I think that's super important. And if I hadn't taken the chances that I've taken over the years, I would be anywhere close to where I am.
I love that, man. That's great advice, and I agree with you 100%. It is a big leap, and a lot of people, sometimes it comes down to who's more willing to take the chance and who's more willing to fail a couple times, because that fear of failure and just trying to stay in your comfort zone really holds a lot of people back.
Oh man, I'm such a perfectionist. It's a huge battle for me to be like, I might fail at this, and the fact that there's a good chance I'll fail, but I'm gonna do it anyway.
Nice, love it. So if you've been watching this whole time, you're still with us. One thing I want you to check down in the info box below. There are two things you can get. One is my direct response millionaire blueprint. You can get it for free. It's a PDF. It's 26 pages, teaches you how to go from copy to offer owner to being a millionaire. And if you're interested in joining Copy Accelerator, which is the program Eric's been in, getting mentored, coaching, all that with copy, there's a link down there.
Recommend, by the way.
There's a link down in the info box for Copy Accelerator as well. Yeah, Eric, loved having you on. Glad you came on to share your story. I think hearing your story, especially for a lot of people who are in 9-to-5 jobs and kind of looking for that reason to take the leap and to expand outside their comfort zone and what they're currently in. I think your story will really resonate with them. So appreciate you coming on and sharing that, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Justin. It's been great.